represents is patriarchy.
We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2020 here in Orlando, Florida, Patriarchs Edition. I'm incredibly proud to bring these next speakers to the stage. This is a first for Patriarch and 21, where we have a married couple coming to the stage to field questions from the audience, to give an insight into how their business works, how their family works, their relationship, their parenting, how they balance it all, and remain two productive individuals that are growing as a couple, as a married couple. With these two, the Guzys, which just have a cool name, to bring on. We got the Guzys. So the Guzys will be coming up here. If you want to get your questions formulated now, go ahead, ask the things you're wondering. If you don't have a family and you're looking like, hey, in the future, I might want this, how do you guys balance it? If it's something that you're going through, hey, I'm struggling with this, how would you go through it? And just get their perspective and you can talk through it. This is an amazing opportunity to look behind the curtain and see how things are working. And maybe you'll find a game plan, or maybe you'll find a perspective that can help you improve the quality and relationship you have in your family, or the one you create. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Guzys to the stage.
Thank you.
Okay, so like Zach said, this is literally a Q&A session. We've got an hour to kill with you guys. We're really excited to be able to do this with you. So we've got nothing else prepared other than to answer your questions. If you get to a lull and you've already asked a question and you've got another one, monopolize our time. We'll answer 16 of your questions if nobody else is asking. So by all means, we're just excited to do this with you, and it looks like Zach is already queued up and ready to go. So let's do this, dude.
I've been holding this in on convention. I wanted to save it for the Q&A. It's 2020. Everybody has access to social media. More men are finding their voice and wanting to share it as they go through their journey in life and self-improvement. And one of the things that we'll see a lot from patriarchs is now people want to start sharing their journey with their family. And for myself and for others on that path, how do you balance sharing time with your family with propping up like stage puppets, of not wanting to become that guy who's sharing too much, keeping it together, keeping it personal, while also showing, here's an example of what I'm doing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and this is one that it's a challenge, because when you are creating content, whether it's just an Instagram photo or you're creating full videos and it needs to be edited and everything else like that, and there's time that takes you out of the moment. And there was a good period during 2016, when I was doing a lot more with Instagram and YouTube, and every single family event that we did, whether it was birthday parties or anything else, I was always there with the camera, and it had the microphone and everything else like that, and I wasn't able to be as present. But then we've got all these great videos that serve as memories of that. And so since then, we've backed off to where we'll make it a point she'll snap a few photos or I'll snap something. But then for the most part, it's just trying to be as present and engaged in whatever it is that we're doing. And you felt like that's been a good balance as far as working backwards from that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what's it like for you as far as having to even think, because you're not doing this on your own platform or anything. This is mostly, she's like the Instagram boyfriend, but for me, which is so backwards. But what's that like for you as far as thinking about that consciously?
Well, I don't know that I'd even think about it if you didn't do what you do. But I've really appreciated your example of wanting to show people what family life can be. And so I've started doing it a little bit more on my own Instagram, and I guess I've started automatically in my mind when we're doing something together as a family, and there's that feeling, and you're kind of brought present of this is good, this is great, this is wonderful. There is part of me that says, could I share this with other people? How can I share this feeling with other people? And if I think I can capture it without compromising the moment, I'll grab a picture or a video or jot down some thoughts to share. But it's pretty minimal. It doesn't feel like your business is very invasive for our life. We don't share meltdowns. We don't share very vulnerable moments for our kids or anything like that. It hasn't been too bad.
No, and I think that's been very conscious and deliberate on our part, where we want to be able to showcase a healthy family life, but we also don't want to exploit our kids, where our kids are not props for me to be able to build my business, and we don't want our kids to grow up feeling like everything about their lives has been publicized. And even the stuff that we share with immediate family or things like that, like we're not into the whole like here's the potty training pics or that kind of stuff, because we want our kids to be able to retain as much dignity as they can. But also at the same time, we certainly feel that if family is taboo on social media because you're afraid of how you overcorrect as far as how it's going to be with your kids, then there aren't going to be any good examples of what family can be, and people won't have families be normalized by having it be on social media as well. So it's a balancing act, but I feel like we've got it down pretty well for now. So does that answer that, Zach? Awesome. Okay.
Hey, so I kind of had a revelation last night when I was looking through some of my notes. You know, I love how a lot of the speakers are talking about, you know, TikTok and Snapchat and like, yeah, keep your kids away from it and all. And I'm all about that. I think there's a lot of really bad stuff out there, you know, so in terms of social media as well as just media in general. You know, like they say back in the day, the PG-13 movies of today would be rated R back then, you know, and all that. But from a younger kid perspective, I just wanted to get your opinion on things like just like cartoons. You know, some cartoons these days are already kind of being infected with some, you know, bad ideas and trying to enforce some bad stuff. But I still see the value of, you know, when you're a kid growing up, you know, you love cartoons, and their friends are going to be watching cartoons, and I'm kind of worried about ostracizing my children by, you know, having them be in this whole dark bubble, and they're going to be the weird kids because of it.
Right.
So I just wanted to get your take on that.
Why don't you start that one?
Well, there are a couple of aspects to that, because in our family, Guzzies do things a certain way. Part of living as a Guzy is accepting that you're weird. You're going to be weird. You're not doing everything that everybody else is doing, and learn to be okay with that. People are going to judge you, and you need to learn to be okay with that.
It helps that we have a weird last name, and it starts off
It
that way.
sticks out, yeah. But you're right. We want our kids to be in the world, but not of the world. And so we do. I mean, they watch cartoons, they play video games, but we are very conscious of what we allow into our home, because it's not just a few cartoons. It's a ton. It's a ton of entertainment for kids that's being totally corrupted, and it just is. It makes those corrupted lifestyles so appealing, and it's not that way in real life. It's not that pretty, but you know, they're very, very good at that. And so we look into everything that they're watching at home, and we talk with them. We speak with them. We canceled Netflix, and so they tell their friends, "Oh, we can't watch that at our house. We don't have Netflix." And their friends are like, "Why don't you have Netflix?" And I heard my daughter say, "My parents don't want to pay for garbage." They, you know.
Yeah, that was a proud moment. That one felt
We're
good.
very proud of that. So we talk through with them why we make the decisions that we do. And I mean, our oldest is 8. It's 8, 6, 4, and 2. And so they can't totally wrap their brains around it, but we're planting the seeds of being intentional about what you're doing, being okay, being weird, and without totally removing yourself from society.
Yeah, and to go along with that, one of the things that we've tried to do intentionally, and so many of the answers that we'll give you guys is what we're still trying to figure out as we go along. Right now, what we do is we limit screen time to where they have to have already done their daily chores, we have to have already gone through school, and then they got half an hour each, and they can either all compound that together and you can watch each other play video games or do something else like that, but they basically got half an hour each that can add up to an hour and a half if they're doing stuff together. And the nice thing about that is it makes it so that the amount of stuff that they're exposed to is we're aware of it, because it's not 6 hours and we're off doing something else and we're not even aware of what it is that they're watching or engaged in, because there have been plenty of shows that seemed pretty safe and innocuous and whatever else, that after we realize we're 6 episodes deep in something and they have to inject this one thing, and then we talk to them about why that's a problem, and then we help them find something else, or the same thing with the games that they play or anything else like that. But a big thing for us is that they don't have iPads, They don't have phones. They don't have anything else like that. I love how Zach puts it as tablet toddlers. Our kids are not tablet toddlers. They have to ask for access to one of ours. We don't give them iPads in the car if we're doing anything less than like a 5-hour road trip and we've picked what the movies are that they're going to watch or anything else like that. But this omnipresence of screen time really doesn't exist for them, which is one of the easiest ways to combat it, is you just kind of limit how much it is that they're even dealing with. Yeah. Go ahead.
First, thanks a lot for taking the time. Just a kind of a compound question, kind of tying back to your presentation from last year. Can you just go through some of the daily rituals or daily things that you guys do with your kids, and then how you kind of keep your daily routine just to reinstill or reinforce the values that you're kind of teaching in your house?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that started to change from where it was last year, because as our kids get older and we're now in a neighborhood where there are so many other kids, we don't get to see them as much. We're not as reclusive isn't the right word, but compact, I guess, as a family unit where they spend more time with friends. And our oldest daughter now has a later bedtime than her siblings, and so it's diminished a little bit of that, and so we're trying to hang on to it. But there are a few things that we make sure that happen every day, and some of them just happen organically. One of the best things about my being self-employed and the fact that we homeschool is that our mornings are entirely our own. And so one thing that typically happens most mornings is we kind of naturally just wake up when we wake up, and then our kids tend to wake up about half an hour after that, and we spend half an hour, 40 minutes just hanging out in our bed with all the kids piled in there, and everybody's just kind of goofing around, and it's a really just good start as far as being in contact with each other throughout the day. But what's it like, because you're doing breakfast a lot of times while I've been out doing triathlon training or other gym stuff or anything. What's it like for a routine from that perspective while I'm gone?
We'll do breakfast. They make their beds. They get dressed. I make sure they're dressed and ready for the day, because kids act differently if they're in their PJs all day. So I make sure to get them in their clothes at the beginning of the day, even before we do school or anything else. Make sure everything's clean. We get going on school, which is also another really nice time. It's just another contact point, because it's just me and them. There are no friends, there are no interruptions, there's no screens or anything. It's just us. And then if everything's done, I set them free, and they're usually out the door, and they come back if they're hungry for lunch.
Or we've got 15 kids that are in our house, because them being set free means everybody from the neighborhood comes over to be at our place.
Yep. And then we have dinner at the same time all together every day. And then they're set free again, and then they come home. And every night we study our scriptures together. We talk about our days. We spend a lot of time. Bedtime isn't just go brush your teeth, get your PJs on, I'm throwing you in bed. Bedtime is let's study together, let's talk together, we pray together, we read every night together. And so kind of the beginning of the day and the end of the days are our most impactful time with the kids.
Yeah, and it's alternated where with the two older girls, they share a room. Our son's in his own room, and so it is a bedtime routine for us is about an hour to an hour and a half that takes out of our time. And again, we don't mind that as much because we have an abundance of time. This would be infinitely more difficult if I were working 10-hour days and having to put that much time into it. But we make bedtime something that we give them all the time and attention and energy that they need so that we can do things spiritually, we can do things from a familial perspective, we can help them wind down. But also for us as a couple, it's so important that we are done with them by 8 o'clock so that we get a couple of hours that it's just the two of us, so that we can interact. And sometimes that's just sitting out on the front porch, and we may be sitting next to each other scrolling through our Twitter feeds just right by each other, and that's all the interaction we get. Or there's a bunch of different things that may end up happening, but for us to be able to have that time together is crucial. Then on a weekly basis, we make a huge point to have Sundays feel different. Our Sundays are different. Those are days that we don't do any of the screen time like they normally do. We do church at home, especially right now with all of the lockdowns and the pandemic stuff and everything else like that. So that's become something that's happened more deliberately, and so we do that. And then we also, I mentioned this in my presentation yesterday, we do Adventure Thursdays, where they don't do stuff with friends, And I don't take calls or anything. For the most part, we just leave our phones even in the car, depending on where it is we're doing, where we're going, or what we're doing. But we try to engage in that as much as possible. And usually those Adventure Thursdays are opportunities to reinforce the things that we talked about last year, as far as Guzy's do hard things, or we do kind things, or we do good things, or we do fun things. And so there's back and forth with that. And so it is a little bit broader than what it was last year because the kids are more independent, but those fundamentals are still there, and the bookend on the day is still there and crucial for us. Yeah. All right, Michael, let's hear it.
I'll give you a heads up on this one. So much of marriage is conflict resolution, keeping a happy marriage, right? When sinners say I do, there's sparks fly. So this is a question I always like to ask elder candidates in the church. So I'm gonna ask you guys this. What was the last argument you got into? How did you resolve it, and who won?
You remember? I mean, the last thing we disagreed on was moving.
But it wasn't an argument.
It wasn't an argument.
I can tell you, Tanner always wins. Because I always end up feeling like he's such a better person than I am. And that to me feels like losing. I'm having a hard time remembering. It doesn't have to be the last one. What's just the last one you remember?
I don't remember the topic. And one thing that I will tell you is that the frequency of arguments that actually felt like arguments, it's decreased almost exponentially over the years. Where early on, especially because I would punish her for the things that my ex-wife would do. You know, there was this projection or this transposition or things like that, or she would think that because I was acting this way, that's the same way that her parents would be in certain situations. And then as we've both learned to be able to give each other the benefit of the doubt and be able to genuinely look at, like, we're not, and this is something I think we've said multiple times, where it's like, we're not enemies. We're on the same team here. And so, and we're even trying to get to the same goal. We may just disagree on how it is that we're trying to get there. And even now there's this big one of looking at, maybe we should be moving somewhere so that we can be on more acreage, and we can have more access to the kids for adventure and wilderness and things like that. And she's been very gung-ho about it, and I've been a little bit more reserved about it. And the fact that it hasn't devolved into an argument, especially when it's a big thing and it's very emotionally charged, and she's pregnant, and so the emotions get there, and I'm busy with work, and there's a lot of potential for a lot of emotionality there, and we haven't dealt with any major blow-ups, which is not to say that we didn't, but we haven't dealt with anything major in a very long time, because we've started to be able to really trust each other that we are on the same team, and that we're after the same goals, and that we're not trying to intentionally disrespect or hurt or anything like that. And most of the time we're both just, if we do that, then it's easy to forgive each other and to give each other the benefit of the doubt, and so we're quick to forgive each other as well. Yeah.
I actually think the times when it gets the most emotional and volatile for me is when Tanner has tried over and over to gently let me know that my perspective is wrong, or my frame is wrong, or how I'm handling something is incorrect, it's not working, and I'm not hearing it. And so he escalates to kind of like get it through my head. And of course that hurts my feelings. It's very painful. He's broken my brain about 5 times that I could tell you about. And it's extremely painful, and I lash out, and it's very difficult. But the way that we see it through every time is he doesn't back down. He does not back down on what I need to hear. But after, like metaphorically striking the biggest blow, he's very gentle and understanding, and I'm here to work with you through it. And that's how it usually gets resolved. It's never me saying, oh, you're totally right, I'm sorry. It's me being able to say, okay, I see it, and I trust you to help me get through it without you losing any love for me, any affection for me. And that's how our biggest arguments are resolved.
And that's come from some mutual trust, as far as she's seen me grow and develop, and she trusts that I'm not asking her to do something that she'll do, and I know that she can handle that, and that she often will give me the same kind of criticism. One of the jokes that we have between us is she'll tell me something that is an absolute paradigm shift that breaks my brain, and she'll say it one year, and then I'll hear it from a man another year, and then that's when it actually clicks and makes sense for me, and she gets to kind of jab her elbow in, and yeah, I told you should have been working on this for a while. But there's this mutual trust that we both are very interested in actually bettering ourselves, and there's evidence between the two of us that we see each other better themselves, and so it's not a threat as far as this is what you need to improve on, or this is what I would like to see different, or this is what I'm struggling with, or anything else, because we both walk the walk as well, and so it's easy to trust each other that it's going to work out that way. Yeah. All right, Tex, go ahead.
Here we go. Okay, so I'm sitting back here listening to you. I was very surprised, Tanner, when I learned how old you actually are. I've known you for a couple of years, and you're a lot younger than I thought you were. The two of you project a wisdom that is, I think, far beyond your ages. I'm assuming your lovely wife is about the same age as yourself.
No, she's 31. She's 5 years younger than I am. Even more impressive, right?
Cradle robber. Yeah, okay. So wisdom is generally passed down through the generations, through support networks and things like that. So I would like to know, as best as possible, and specifically for both of you, it's really important for the female side as well, where do you get your support? Where do you get that generational wisdom? How did you get where you are? And more specifically, for those of us who have wives, where do you find that feminine support, which is so missing out there right now, because daughters and mothers are separated by huge distances these days, and grandmothers sometimes are no longer here anymore, and all that generational wisdom that would flow down through those ages is hard to find anymore.
You start it.
I was going to tell you the same thing. As far as, well, okay, I was blessed to have a mother who absolutely adores having children. I never heard her complain about being a mom, not once. She had 7 kids in 8 years, and she was very tired, but she was blissfully happy. She loves kids. She loved having babies. She would have kept going if she could. And so I have 4 sisters, and they all, I mean, they don't all have kids, but they also got that from my mom. That was very reinforced. And then as far as, so she's been very supportive in me wanting to be a mom and a wife, and his mother has been very supportive of me wanting to be a mom. As far as kind of a broader scope, the church and the community we grew up in and we're a part of now is absolutely a huge support for women. We have the largest women's organization, and we have networks in place. It's kind of this automatic system of no matter where you move, you have women to reach out to. And you have so many older women to reach out to as well. And we do have a very strong emphasis on the importance of being a wife and a mother. So all of those values are reinforced through our church and through that women's group. Trying to think of the other parts of your question. I feel a lot of the support I get is actually from Tanner. I would not be the kind of wife and mother I am without Tanner. I remember when my oldest was 6 months old, I was still in that zombie newborn phase, and I was just surviving. And again, he had tried to be gentle, but he had to strike the blow of, you are not thriving, you are just surviving, and we can't live like this. And then he didn't just step back and say, figure it out. He has provided everything I need to be a good mom and a better wife. And I find so much support from him as well, so much reinforcement.
Yeah, and that's mutual, where we've been blessed to find a complementary nature to our relationship, where there are things that I struggle with, or that are challenges for me, or that I don't have the energy for, or anything else, and I know that she can handle it. One of the most kind of acute ways that this comes up, but we always laugh about it every time, is when we're camping, because the division of labor just happens so naturally, where she's wrangling the kids and she's getting the food packed and everything, and or unpacked and cooking, and I'm the one who's getting the tent set up and getting all this other stuff done. And we both are just very focused on our own tasks. And then we turn around and we both are just, oh, I'm so glad that you're here and you're doing this, and I'm so glad that you're here and you're doing that. And it just feels like it's magic that it ends up working and coming together. But honestly, the point that she hit on the most, because we're very grateful to have families, and we're blessed to have families that work that way. And the reason that our families work that way ultimately comes from our beliefs based on our community and our church and our religion. And I'll tell you guys that one of the dirty secrets about the way that we are, the presentations that I give here, the way that we are when we're on Twitter, and if you're not following her on Twitter, you should be. But everything that we talk about, it's the stuff that we learn about in church. We just kind of sneak it in on you guys because we're not as overt about it being God stuff, but it's the same principles, really. It really is. And so much of what you're hearing from us, and so much what you have heard or will hear from us, are the fundamental core doctrines and truths that we believe in based on our relationship with God and with our church, and they resonate because they're true. And then when you recognize that truth and you build an entire community around it full of other people who resonate with that, then it becomes an incredibly impactful support structure that everybody can then lean on and rely on each other for as well. So it's awesome to be able to have that for us. Yeah.
I always have to write stuff down. I can never think off the top of my head. So there's been a underlying theme that's been occurring around the idea of submission, right? Men lead, women submit, and I'm sure in like 2018 when Tex gave his first speech, every guy was like, "Hey, how do I get my wife to do that?" Right? But it's a caricature, of sorts about the role of women. And even this year, speakers, kind of project like an authoritarian role of the man in the household. But I do like Jeff Putnam's description of just being a judge, an adjudicator, right, for a lot of things. I think it's a more balanced approach. So my question, I don't think there can be strong families without strong women. And in the context of submissive woman, I was wondering if there was anything that you would like to add or to maybe bust, to break open that caricature of what it means to be a strong woman, but in a submissive role, like inside of a family, because there's got to be balance, right? We talk about the absence of fathers, but you can't have an absent mother either. So, just giving you a voice to say there's more to it than just, giving us a different perspective as men hearing about being leaders. I just would like to hear your
what does it mean to you to be submissive and still strong? Because she is. She's both submissive and strong. How's that?
Well, because the caricature is on both ends of being, girl power, which is gross, and then submission, which is just feels like you dilute yourself, and they're both, those extreme examples are both incorrect. I don't know, besides childbirth, that anything has taken as much strength from me to choose to let him lead, especially at first. When he was first,
I sucked at it.
He sucked at it.
I
He
was
went
really
Red
bad
Bull
at it.
Rambo. And as far as strength and submission goes, it sets your brain on fire. You're screaming. There's this really just huge dissonance within you of naturally we think we know what's right. Naturally we have a good idea of how things should go, and we like to tell ourselves we see things clearly. And to let go of all of that and and give it to someone else at first required more willpower than anything I've ever done. Absolutely. And then when you let that go, you can focus on the strength where the traditional perception of strength comes in. I still have to show my kids that I do hard things too. Whether that's exercise or making decisions about nutrition or keeping commitments that I don't want to keep or losing friends because I am not willing to not speak up for what I believe, or all of these other more traditionally strong ways to demonstrate that. I'm more able to work on that. I'm more able to be strong where I don't show fear when things are scary for my kids, where I don't, I think of 100 different examples, where I don't panic, where I, all those things where it really matters. And where my impact as a woman is distinct. Part of that is not making sure I don't undermine Tanner in front of the kids. And, because it's not like I can never speak my mind. It's not like that doesn't happen, but it's done privately. And that can be really difficult too. But it's been 9 years, and kind of like going to the gym, it's not like the weights get lighter, you get stronger. And so that sort of submission comes so much more naturally now. And I find so much security in it, and peace and joy and fulfillment, and to be able to show my daughters that, and to let my son see it in a different light. It's so much more enriching for all of us than to be constantly butting heads, or to see, or to have them wonder, how's this going to go today? Like, who do I need to turn to today? Just to have so much cohesion and unity has been huge for us. Yeah. It's been huge for us.
Yeah, and then the same thing, there's the caricature on our end, where you get the doormat, the happy wife, happy life, you do whatever whatever makes you feel happy, or you get this, a woman's and a children's place is to be seen but not heard, and I don't need to take counsel from her because I'm the man, father knows best, that kind of stuff. And I absolutely consult my wife. I love the way that Jeff put it, that she's an advisor, she's a consultant and a counselor, and there have been multiple times, especially because you can see her thoughtfulness and how seriously she takes things, that she brings a perspective that I never considered at all. And then when I take that and I do factor that in, it absolutely changes the direction that I believe is the one in which we should be headed. And so ultimately the responsibility does lie with me. The buck stops with me. And even that, the pressure that comes from that, it doesn't mean I get to do whatever I want. I remember the first time I experienced that, we were buying a car like a year into our marriage. And when she said, well, I just trust you to buy the right one. And I'm like, oh, crap. That means if I screw up, I can't blame it on you. I can't say, well, we decided this together. Like, all of this burden of responsibility is on me. And so rather than it being a free-for-all that it's like I can do whatever I want, I realized that all that responsibility was there. And it was another one of those fires that got lit under me that made me step up and accept that responsibility even more. And so I absolutely love and appreciate and seek her counsel, and her perspective is so valuable. And sometimes what she says is exactly what we need to do, and sometimes it's not. And we both, again, trust each other that when it goes one way or the other, that there's not that ego investment in it in either direction. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in your speech and in other speeches here, we've heard a lot about rituals or rites and passages for sons. However, as a father of 2 daughters, what are some things that I could do? And I'm divorced, I have joint custody. What are some things that I could do to help my daughters move through life?
Man, when you find out, please tell me, because I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But you're right, because when we're here, we spend all this time thinking about masculinity and sons and everything else. And I've really appreciated, as I've listened to the other speakers, that the patriarch component has moved. And it's good that we focus on this, because we don't get to talk about masculinity in the broader world. And I hope that as we've been able to kind of, get our ducks in a row when it comes to sexual dynamics, and then you can move into bigger things like legacy and parenthood and family and stuff like that, that hopefully we'll get our ducks in a row in thinking about how it is to raise our sons in this kind of a world, and then be able to think more broadly and more intentionally about what it is with daughters. One thing that I think you could probably do that she does, and I'll let her explain more of it, is helping them understand the unique aspects of what it is to be a girl and a woman, and not that it's this weird bastardization of trying to be a man, but actually what are the strengths of being a strong woman and how that plays out. And yeah, why don't you tell them how you do that with our girls?
And I don't have it all figured out, but let's see. So our oldest is a girl. She's 8, and Tanner's been spending a lot of time with our son because he's old enough to deadlift. He's old enough to go off-roading. He's old enough to do all these things, and they've just really been bonding. It's been very fast. It's been this snowball effect. And we were talking in the car the other day that it's just as important for our 8-year-old to get to that level of affection with you. And, you know, it's like, what are you going to do? Take her to go get her nails done? You know, what could you do? But I remember I had a very good relationship with my dad. And I remember he was an air traffic controller, and he loved talking about planes. And I remember I don't care about planes, but I loved listening to him talk about it. He wanted to share with me. He thought I was smart enough. He cared enough about me and my opinion. He wanted to bring me into his world, even if it was just to show me his world. He took me to work with him. He introduced me to all of his coworkers. And that was huge for me. Find ways to bring them into your world. And they don't have to learn to love the things that you love, but just show them what you're doing. Show them how you're trying. Show them your goals. Show them what you're working on. And another thing I would say is at about, I don't know, at 8, at 12, at 16, find ways that you can treat them differently. Give them some sort of responsibility. Put them in charge of something. Give them some sort of something that makes them feel I am no longer any of the ages I was before, and I'm never going back to that. It can even be pierce their ears when they're 8, or let them, you know, when you start letting them wear makeup, or when you start expecting them to do a certain chore, or when you start relying on them for dinner every Thursday, or give them a task, have her make something for you. Give them responsibility. They want it. I've been teaching my girls, you should be a delight and a joy to your father. Find ways to make that happen. Let's find ways together to make that happen. We should be making his life more beautiful. Look at all he does. Look at all he does. Let's add to that. Let's enrich it. Let's enrich his life. And as you continue to consciously treat them like they're never again going to be younger than they are, they want to grow. They want that approval. They want to grow in the way that you want them to, if you trust them enough to do it.
Absolutely.
All right, I hope this question isn't as uncomfortable to ask as it is for me to ask it, but being that, as I've said before, I'm about to become a father, and you don't get this many times to ask truly a husband and wife together this question, but 2 parts. When you first had your first child and now having 4 children, what is your marital sexual relationships looking like back then and now in terms of, are things still spontaneous? Are they planned? You know, how much effort do you have to put into it versus how much of it is kosher?
There's more effort as far as, yeah, we've got 4 kids, and they can bump in at any time or anything else like that. But at the same time, it's not, we heard a couple, I forgot about this. We were sitting out on our front porch, and we happened to be situated in the neighborhood perfectly where you can hear people from like 6 houses down, and it just comes perfectly into our ears. And we hear this woman, I don't even know who she's talking to. And how did she put it?
She said, "We're not having sex. It's not Tuesday."
And we were both laughing so hard because you could understand it, when things are that busy and that chaotic and everything else like that. But at the same time, it's not like that. And one of the things, and obviously I know you're not actually asking us to be explicit, and it's a tricky question. But one of the things that I will tell you is that the intensity as far as what you would see on screen or on anything else as far as the tactical approach to our marital relationship is different and a lot more tame than what it was when we were first married. But the connection, the intimacy, the spirituality, the way that we draw from each other, as far as my taking from her taking from me, and the way that we draw closer to each other and everything, is infinitely better. And so in a way, it feels like, this is probably a stupid analogy, but it feels like, in a way, the world talks about sex kind of like you're driving an airplane down the runway and you just keep going back and forth, and you're thinking, sweet, I'm going really fast. And that's not what it's actually intended to do. And so when you've got the built-in trust and the spiritual relationship and all of this other thing that comes with it, yeah, you're not doing these crazy sharp turns or anything anymore, but you're actually taking flight and you're doing what it's intended to do, and you realize how much of a joke that other approach to it actually was. And so as far as that component of it, it's better now than it's ever been, and it's still spontaneous, it's still frequent, it's still satisfying, it's still connective, and it also doesn't feel like we're trying to just do it the way that the world tells us we're supposed to do it either.
Right, and I would say with the new baby, be understanding, be patient, but be persistent. Don't, because a lot of times when you put whatever it is off for a new baby to allow room, a lot of times it just stays put off forever. It's really easy to get caught in that inertia of, I'm trying to be patient, trying to be understanding, trying to be kind. Therefore, I have done nothing with my life. We don't have sex. I don't work out. But the new baby, and that just continues and continues. So there's a balance to be had, but don't be honest through the whole thing. I think that's one thing that has led us to a more fulfilling, enriching, intense sex life, is that we have been more honest with each other, way more honest, without trying not, without getting defensive, we have just been a lot more open and honest with each other, and that has made a big difference. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right, it looks like we have time for one more if anybody else wants to sneak one in. Yeah, let's hear it, Will.
I just want to say I think that was an incredibly brave question to ask, and it was an incredibly brave question to answer. So thank you both so much for that. So over the course of the convention, as I've been observing you guys and your relationship, just seeing you interacting, there's been a quality that I've been struggling to name that's really obvious, but I don't know what it is. And sitting here and just listening to this answer, it finally struck me what it is. And there's many of them, but this is the one that seemed most relevant, is that there's trust. The trust between the two of you is really remarkable. And I'm curious about that. Has it always been there? Has there been opportunities to cultivate that trust, to deepen it, to discover it for the first time? Because going from just dating to having 4.5 kids, that's a pretty major journey that you've been on together. But the trust it feels to me like it's probably deepened since then. I'm just wondering if you can both speak to that journey of trust that you've both been on together and that you're sharing with us, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a great question. Like she was talking about, as far as willfully choosing to submit when I wasn't somebody who was worth submitting to, there was an element at the beginning of our relationship where we were both choosing to trust each other, even though that trust was totally unproven, especially because we did things really quickly. We started dating and were engaged and married, and then she was pregnant all within like 6 months of each other. Like we went through things really, really quickly, and that's just kind of the nature of who we are, as we're tear the Band-Aid off kind of people. And so there was that element of choosing to trust, even though it was uncomfortable to do so, and there's risk involved with that. But then that has happened over the years, and a lot of the reason why that happened is because we were dealing with the fact that because things happened so quickly, my family wasn't very pumped about my getting married to her. Her family wasn't that pumped about her getting married to me. We were dealing with the fallout of my previous marriage and everything that came from that. We were dealing with, it felt like the odds were totally stacked against us, which meant that there wasn't anybody we could rely on except for each other. And so it really kind of forced us to be able to go into and toward each other, as opposed to she could go back to mom and dad, or I could go back to mom and dad, or to friends, or to anything else like that. And so it really did become this kind of us against the world. And thankfully now so many of those relationships have improved, but there was that kind of forced baptism by fire in which that had to happen. So that's one element of it. And then the other one is one that we've already both hit on a little bit, but we don't work on our marriage. We really don't. We work on ourselves. And as we work on ourselves, and we trust that we see each other working on themselves and working on improving and everything else. And I certainly ask her where my blind spots are, and she asks me where hers are. We help each other out by offering that kind of information, but we don't work on our marriage. We just try to make ourselves the best versions of who we are. We work on how we are as parents. And as we see each other do that, as I see her do little things like she drops the weight after every pregnancy. She looks phenomenal after every pregnancy, and people will say that that's superficial or that's vain or whatever, but I know that one of the reasons she does it is because she wants to be attractive for me, and that she wants to set that example for our kids, and I see the work that she puts into that. Or I see the things that she posts on social media and the friendships that get blown up from that because she stands for what's true and what's right. And I see her do brave, hard, strong, Guzy things. How can I not trust that? Because she's willing to put it out on the line. She's willing to do the work, and it happens. I see the results. It's like I said at my very opening speech, I've watched 9 years of her efforts bear very good fruit. And so why would I not continue to trust that as she continues to cultivate that it's going to continue to bear more very good fruit?
Thank you. I think a lot of that trust that we've had to exercise has looked like I said earlier, me stepping back and giving him space and letting him do what he thinks is going to be good. And from my perspective, the trust for him has been trusting that he can give me expectations, that he can set boundaries, that he can give me criticism and suggestions, and that I won't lose it, that I won't say, that's it, I'm done. Like that's too much, that he can trust that regardless of my initial reaction, that I'll internalize it and that I'll think about it and that I'll be honest with myself. And so there has been willpower on both sides and self-discipline on both sides, because trust is a choice and a decision, and it requires that self-mastery of, it looks different for both of us, but it has required that from both of us. Yeah.
Awesome. That's a great question. Well, thank you. All right, guys, that is it for time. Zach's not in here to finish us out, so thank you guys. Thank you. And,
What he represents is patriarchy.
We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.